Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and school. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Mark, chapters 14 through 16.
And we're finishing Mark.
Yeah, isn't that exciting? This is going to be the second gospel that we finished.
Yeah.
And then there are two more, and then there's Acts.
Now, let's look ahead. Coming up next on Atheist Sunday School
Is Luke.
And Luke is longer. Luke is 24 chapters long. How long was Matthew? Matthew wasn't that long.
Well, the thing is, Matthew had a lot of chapters, but
yeah, Matthew was
like Mark has
chapters.
Mark has
It was the first chapter of the New Testament that you guys read. We also had the most commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would make sense. So for Mark, there aren't as many chapters, but the chapters are a lot longer than in Matthew. So
when do we run into the woman taken in adultery?
John.
John. You were supposed to start in John.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is where you're supposed to start reading the entire Bible. Yep, in John.
Well, you know what? Actually, if you're a Christian, just reading one gospel is probably good enough.
But it depends on which one you read.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We'll have to tell them what the best one is when we're done.
Yep.
Either way, it's the Passion narrative.
Yes, the Passion narrative. I have the King James version of the Bible.
I have the English Standard Version of the Bible.
I have the NIV Study Bible. And the Jewish Annotated New Testament.
I have from the Hermenius series a translation with commentary by Adela Yarbo Collins on Mark. The entire thing. It's a pretty big book. We also have the Greek New Testament and the text of the Greek New Testament, or I should say a textual
Textual guide.
Textual guide. That's the word I was looking for. Textual guide to the Greek New Testament. We also have the text of the New Testament by Bruce Metzger.
And the Historical Jesus in Context by Levine, among others.
Yeah, Levine, Allison, and Crossan. Yeah.
And we also have Eerdman's commentary on the Bible, as well as the New King James. Though the New King James has been a footstool for Baal.
Which is great for Baal.
Yep.
That's a good boy. You really deserve it, buddy.
You know what I've got here? The books of Enoch. We finished these.
We did. We
don't need this anymore.
That's true.
At all.
We don't.
We can remove that from the table.
We can.
Permanently.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
We also have the Oxford Companion to the Bible.
Okay, but we don't talk about the Oxford Companion to the Bible.
Why is it even on the table?
I don't even know. I mean, technically, we're not done with the Bible yet, right? So, like,
well, yeah,
it's theoretically
one day it
might become useful.
Purpose.
Well,
Yeah,
when are you done with the Bible? Is it after the New Testament? Is it after you finish the Triple Bible for the Mormons?
Probably after the New Testament is where it ends, huh?
Yeah, you think so?
Well,
I
at
think
least
some
for that book.
Mormons would be opposed.
For that specific book right there, the Oxford Companion to the Bible, yes, it ends with the New Testament.
Okay. Well, anyways, what do you want to say before we get into these last three chapters?
You know what? Nothing specific, because we kind of went over a lot of it when we were covering Matthew.
Yeah.
So we can just hop into it.
So maybe this will be much the same as Matthew. Maybe it won't be. But we'll see when we get into it. Now, Matthew did take from Mark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably it'll be much the same.
Absolutely.
Then let's hop into it. Chapter 14. Yes, 14.
Okay.
After 2 days was the feast of the Passover and of unleavened bread. And the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might take him by craft and put him to death. They're referring to Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, the Passover, I'm sure all of our viewers are aware of the Passover, the whole Moses thing. They have all these celebrations. It's not really much of a celebration because you can't eat bread. It is what it is. But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar of the people. And being in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. And she brake the box and poured it on his head. So here we have an anointing.
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and it should be noted here that, so I did cover this in my Passover video, but Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were initially separate. They were different festivals, and eventually they kind of, came to be celebrated all as one.
Yeah, now let me point this out. In John's gospel, this incident occurs before Passion Week begins. Matthew and Mark may place it here to contrast the hatred of the religious leaders and the betrayal by Judas with the love and devotion of the woman who anointed Jesus. Also, a woman anoints Jesus. The action could be either that of anointing a king or of preparing a body for burial. Mark's principle of irony would suggest both. A further irony is that although she is acting in a prophetic way, many of those present do not perceive the meaning of her action and respond very negatively. And the alabaster jar is probably a globular container of carved translucent gypsum. Its long neck would be broken, so the contents could be poured out. Spikenard grows in the Himalayan region. I'm sure that helps for all of those missing years of Jesus theorists who say that he went off to India, right? Anyways, so he gets this stuff poured on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, why was this waste of the ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and have been given to the poor. And they murmured against here. Now, I'm sure we've talked about before a little bit how in Rabbinic Judaism, it is standard to give to the poor, not in excess, but when possible.
Yeah.
Right. So the complaint here really is that, she may or may not be breaking some kind of mitzvah.
Yeah, or the fact that, they're saying, oh, this is worthless to use on this guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, it was a Jewish custom to give gifts to the poor on the evening of Passover. Or evenings, given that it lasts multiple days.
Sure. But yeah, that like Passover was like one day, right? But then the Feast of Unleavened Bread is the one that, Passover was the one that was long one. Feast of Unleavened Bread was the one thing. And then those did come together because they did overlap. They're like right next to each other. So they became to be celebrated as one.
Mm-hmm. And Jesus said, let her alone. Why trouble ye her? She hath wrought a good work on me. For ye have the poor with you always, and whensoever ye will, ye may do them good. But me ye have not always. She hath done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily, I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her.
Yeah, so this also just pretty much tells you, yes, Jesus will die here at the end. Like, we already know that, right? But even in the context of the story.
So the Jewish Annotated New Testament has something to say about this. But first, there was the double entendre, if you will, of anointing a king and anointing a body. Here, it is made outright by Jesus that it is about anointing a body.
Yes.
Now, the Jewish Annotated New Testament says the anointing will be retold in remembrance of her, but her name is not given.
Yeah, right. Isn't that something?
Yeah. Perhaps the omission of her name is ironic. The unnamed every woman understands him, while the named disciples do not. She may be compared to the unnamed centurion who understands Jesus' role as the divine son, while the disciples, again, do not. She is further contrasted to the three named women who attempt to anoint Jesus' body but fail in chapter 16, just as the unnamed centurion is contrasted to the three named disciples who fail in Gethsemane in chapter 14, verse 33. Woman characters are also emphasized in the Jewish novellas of this period: Esther, Judith, Susanna, Joseph, and Asenath.
Yeah, Susanna was a hell of a read.
Yeah.
Got pretty intense there.
Interesting that they include Esther as a Jewish novella of the period.
Right. Because the thing is, it's not, because Esther wasn't exactly historical, but like definitely a historical fiction that was used to promote, I guess, Purim, right? Was the celebration that they were having? It was Purim, yeah. And Esther was a funny book.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it's interesting because if you look back at the earlier literature, it's pretty much exclusively male protagonists, right? So during this Second Temple period, when they're becoming more inundated with Greek thought, they're beginning to use female protagonists for exploring different ideas, and they do that in Greek novels as well. So it could be a little bit of cross-culturalism there. And Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the chief priests to betray him unto them. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him.
Yeah, so some scholars have argued that verses 10 through 11, the Judas part, constituted the continuation of verses 1 through 2 in the pre-Markan Passion narrative. So that's like the first two verses about it being Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It is more likely, however, that verses 10 through 11, like verses 1 through 2, were composed by Mark. The evangelist reproduces here the name Judas Iscariot from the traditional list of the 12 that he used in composing 3:13 through 19. He probably found the designation of Judas as one of the 12 in his Passion source, and used it as a model in composing the titular form of it in verse 10. No motivation is given for Judas's decision to hand Jesus over to the chief priests and scribes. Matthew apparently filled in that narrative gap by implying that Judas was a lover of money. He makes this point by having, he specifically gets the money, like, hey, I'll hand him over if you give me some money. Luke fills in the gap by stating that Satan entered into Judas. That's right. I remember that now. John makes the motivation of greed explicit, adding that Judas was a thief, and also presents Judas as under the power of the devil. So it's both. For Mark, however, the phrase "in order to hand him over" was a sufficient interpretation. Although Judas was not relieved of responsibility, the allusion to Isaiah 53:6 and 12 in the Septuagint implies that the death of Jesus was divinely ordained. That's the suffering servant. Verse 11 vividly portrays the conspiracy in the details of the joy of the chief priests and Judas's active waiting for an opportunity to carry out such a treacherous promise.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was enough for him just to link it with the suffering servant.
And the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, his disciples said unto him, Where wilt thou that we go and prepare that thou mayest eat the Passover? Now, when they say kill the Passover.
Yeah, the Passover meal.
Yeah. Probably the lamb, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Right. So this kind of takes away from that Jesus as the Paschal Lamb concept, right?
Well, that's in John, where it's very explicit.
Right. But here, like, they kill the Passover lamb. They do it so that they can, perform their standard procedures. And he sent forth 2 of his disciples, and saith unto them, Go ye into the city, and there shall meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him. And wheresoever he shall go in, say ye to the good man of the house, the master saith, where is the guest chamber, where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room, furnished and prepared. There make ready for us. And his disciples went forth and came into the city, and they found as he had said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. And in the evening he cometh with the 12. And as they sat and did eat, Jesus said, Verily I say unto you, one of you which eateth with me shall betray me. And they began to be sorrowful, and to say unto him one by one, Is it I? And another said, Is it I? And he answered and said unto them, It is one of the 12 that dippeth with me in the dish.
Yeah, so this is the exact same thing that happened in Matthew, where Judas had his hands in the bowl when Jesus said that.
Mm-hmm.
So same kind of thing here,
right? And in this instance, Judas has already betrayed him.
He did, yeah.
It's
yeah.
not
now
like,
they're just kind of waiting,
right?
Yeah, for the other shoe to drop.
Oddly enough, he says like one of you will betray me, right? Judas has already betrayed him.
Yeah, but it hasn't come to fruition yet, I guess.
Right. The Son of Man indeed goeth, as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Good were it for that man if he had never been born. Kind of Kohelet-y.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if that is an intentional reference.
What's on verse 21 there?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think so, because it's also kind of Job, right? Because he was all like, I wish I was never born, kind of thing.
Right.
So I doubt that it's supposed to be like a direct reference, but I think that, the idea of never having been born was just commonly taken as,
right,
being better than living at all, which I totally get.
Yeah. And as they did eat, Jesus took bread and blessed and brake it and gave to them and said, Take, eat, this is my body. And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it. And he said unto them, This is my blood of the New Testament. Whoa!
Of the new covenant. The new covenant.
Yeah, the new covenant.
Yes. Okay, so hold up. I got some commentary on this. The reading in the text has strong manuscript support, that being of the covenant. If kines new were original, so you have the word there that's being used is tes diathekes. That's what we have there. So if kines new were original, there is no good reason why it would have been omitted. It is much more likely that a copyist added kines under the influence of the parallel accounts in Luke 22:20 and 1 Corinthians 11:25. It may be helpful in translation to make explicit that this is God's covenant.
Mm-hmm. Now, he says the New Testament, which is shed for many. That's blood, right? Now, the Hebrew annotated New Testament.
Yeah, this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Yeah.
First of all, they point out that new, as in New Testament or New Covenant, is an addition by later scribes.
Yeah.
Second of all, the covenant is ratified by Jesus' blood, just as Moses ratified the Sinai covenant with blood. Despite the use of new covenant at 1 Corinthians and Hebrews, that's 11:25 and 8:13, both alluding to Jeremiah 31:31. Mark's language, and likely Paul's as well, suggests a concern with the present covenant, not a new or different covenant. The new was added by later scribes. So that is pretty clearly outlined that this is not part of the original text.
Yeah.
Or at least
the new part, yeah.
Right. The Son of Man indeed goeth, as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Good were it for that man if he had never been born. Oh, I had already read that. Verily I say unto you, I will drink no more of the fruit of the vine until that day that I drink it new in the kingdom of God. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives, and Jesus saith unto them, All ye shall be offended because of me this night.
Yeah, so it looks like, when he's doing the whole, like, this is my body and this is my blood thing, that's part of the whole sacrifice mentality.
Mm-hmm. Now, the bread and the wine also are things that you give blessings over in the ceremony.
Yeah.
Right. So here he's identifying himself with that thing to which is being blessed.
Yeah, right? there's no like idea of like a what's it called, like a trance when you know how some people believe that he's like I think is it the Catholics that believe
during the Eucharist?
That they literally...
Yeah, that is Catholic.
It is Catholics? Okay.
Yeah, they believe that they are literally eating the flesh and drinking the blood of Jesus.
Transubstantiation, that's the word. It's in here.
Right.
Okay, yeah, at this early point, there was no idea of that.
Right. Moving on. Jesus saith unto them, All ye shall be offended because of me this night. For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. Where is this written?
Yeah, so that's what, verse 27 it looks like. Holy shit, there's a very long...
Zechariah 13:7.
Okay.
Yeah.
At some... Yeah, Zechariah 13:7, which reads, Strike the shepherds and draw out the sheep, and remove the sheep. Yeah.
But after that, I am risen. I will go before you into Galilee. But Peter said unto him, Although all shall be offended, yet will not I. And Jesus saith unto him, Verily I say unto thee, that this day, even in this night, before the cock croweth twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. We've run into this before.
We have, yes.
Yeah. But he spake the more vehemently, If I should die with thee, I will not deny thee in any wise. Likewise also said they all. And they came to a place which was named Gethsemane, and he saith unto his disciples, Sit ye here while I shall pray. And he taketh with him Peter and James and John, and began to be sore amazed, and to be very heavy, and saith unto them, My soul is exceeding sorrowful unto death. Tarry ye here and watch. And he went forward a little, and fell on the ground, and prayed that, if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father. Abba is the Aramaic for father. All things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou will. And, okay, so here we see something that stands against the Trinitarian doctrine, right? The will of Jesus is manifestly different than the will of God.
Oh, well, he would like it to be, certainly. Yeah.
Right. Well, here he's saying,
like he knows that it has to happen.
Don't let me die. I don't want to die. This is not what I want. But don't do it because it's not what I want, but because it's not what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that implies, one, that there is some kind of difference in cognition between Jesus and God, where, first of all, Jesus doesn't know what God wants. And second of all, Jesus at least believes that he and God have different wants.
Yeah. So interesting that he used the term father there, right? So
twice.
Yeah. So of course we already talked about it being Aramaic, right? But it looks like it has a distinctive usage for Jesus, since the term was not used in contemporary Jewish texts or prayers.
Yeah, let me also point out that it's Aramaic for father, not Hebrew for daddy, as some scholars formerly argued.
Okay.
Man, that'd be a hell of a ride.
Well, father by
saying
itself
Abba instead of daddy.
Yeah, father by itself in Jewish tradition is more likely to be associated with Abraham or some other patriarch than with God. While king is often a title for God, father is sometimes used in combination. However, e.g., the later Jewish prayer, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. So it is used in reference to God, but it's uncommon.
Yeah. Paul apparently uses two terms of Abba to explicitly state that this form of address is used in a context of ecstatic prayer. It is noteworthy that both Paul and Mark, although writing in Greek, preserved the Aramaic word and translated. Mark used or preserved Aramaic words in the miracle stories because they were believed to be powerful words. Classic. Following the address of God as so it says Abba Hopater, so the Father, but it says Abba the Father, so Father the Father.
Right. So he's using two different terms to refer to him. And probably the intention here is to display like his panic at that moment.
Yeah, right? I would say so.
Because he's like basically, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, someone. Yeah. Not quite, but close. And he cometh and findeth them sleeping, and saith unto Peter, Simon, sleepest thou? Couldst not thou watch 1 hour? Watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away, and prayed, and spake the same words. And when he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, neither wist they what to answer him. Okay, so have you ever done a Passover Seder, Lawrence?
I have been to Passover Seders.
You know how many glasses of wine you drink?
A lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wine.
Like, you can't really blame these guys
for passing out, yeah.
First of all, they do the entire Passover Seder. They have a huge filling meal, and they drink a shitload of wine.
Yeah.
And then they climb a mountain. And Jesus is like, now stay awake, guys. Yeah, good luck with that.
Or I think it's because Peter said that he wouldn't fall asleep, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And he cometh the third time and saith unto them, Sleep on now and take your rest. It is enough. The hour is come. Behold!
Behold!
The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand. And immediately, while he yet spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Take him and lead him away safely. And as soon as he was come, he goeth straightway to him, and saith, Master, Master, and kissed him. And they laid their hands on him, and took him. And as one of them that stood by drew a sword, and smote a servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear.
Yeah, so that first. Secondly, the kiss of death thing, he's kind of like marking Jesus as like, this is the guy you got to get.
Right. We know from John that it was Peter, and the servant he struck was named Malchus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he cuts this guy's ear off.
Yep. I mean, we had that in Matthew too, right?
Yes, we had it in Matthew. And
yeah, he cut off Peter's ear, I think, in Matthew explicitly.
I mean, we also know, based on these verses, that the followers of Jesus carried swords around with them.
Apparently.
Not exactly what you think of when you think of like the image of these guys, right? But hey, it is what it is. Anyways, and Jesus answered and said unto them, Are ye come out as against a thief with swords and with staves to take me? I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and ye took me not, but the scriptures must be fulfilled. And they all forsook him and fled. And there followed him a certain young man, having a linen cloth cast about his naked body. And the young man laid hold on him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked.
Yeah, so this is a weird diatribe, right? Like, it's just kind of cuts off into talking about this one guy here.
Yeah, it's not specifically identified, but his anonymity may suggest that this was Mark, the writer of the gospel.
No?
Probably not.
I don't. No way.
I wouldn't think so.
No, just because you're anonymous doesn't, like, we already have anonymous characters in here, so like, why would they draw the conclusion that? I mean, yeah, this one's weirder than the others.
Well, we had an anonymous guy with a sword, and now we have an anonymous naked guy. But
right, exactly.
Here, the Jewish Annotated New Testament says this is perhaps a remnant from an earlier account. New members were baptized nude, but it's not likely that such an act would be carried out at night under these conditions. Still, the scene conceivably suggests an interrupted baptism and the panicked flight of the follower.
So
that may be going on.
So yeah, it looks like that's a possible interpretation. This is someone who was just baptized. So here's a little bit on let me just say there are multiple pages about this naked guy, right? So I'm not going to spend too long on it, but I will talk about it a little bit here. So Epiphanius identified the young man as James, the brother of the Lord. Ambrose, John Chrysostom, and Bede, I think I don't know how to pronounce that. Is it Bede, Bede? I don't know. Identified him as John, the son of Zebedee, the anonymous author of a 7th century commentary on Mark that was attributed to Jerome in the Middle Ages, says regarding our passage, quote, "This is proper to Mark. This is like the case of Joseph, who, leaving behind his tunic, fled in the nude from the hands of the shameless mistress of the house. Whoever wants to escape from the hands of wicked people, let them mentally abandon the things of the world and flee after Jesus." Like Epiphanius and other ancient writers, many modern authors have taken this passage as a historical reminiscence. Tyson raised the question whether the relationship of the young man to Jesus was meant to remain shadowy. He considered the anonymity of the disciple to be striking and explained it in terms of protective anonymity. He had run afoul of the police. He offered resistance and therefore was in danger. It would be inopportune to mention his name or even to admit that he was a member of the Christian community. This hypothesis does not explain why the young man was dressed or nearly undressed in the way he was. Other scholars maybe there was like something on his linen cloth, right?
Well,
it says nothing
it's a
but
fine linen garment. Ordinarily, it's the outer garment that is made of wool.
Yeah, but maybe
the
there's
fine linen behind in the hand of the guard indicates that the youth was from a wealthy family.
Yeah, but I'm thinking maybe there was something on it that was that would like be a way to identify him or something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, a number of scholars have concluded that the incident is symbolic. John Knox suggested that the whimsical story of the young man in the linen cloth is a cryptic reference to the empty tomb. What? Okay. In a later study, he argued that quote, Mark likes to describe events in proleptic fashion, or at any rate, to make cryptic references to coming future events.
Mm-hmm.
Both Jesus and the young man were seized by the arresting party, just as the young man broke free, leaving the linen cloth behind. So Jesus was likewise destined to escape the hands of his enemies, leaving only the linen cloth in which he was wrapped. Mm. That is, I guess, a possible interpretation.
And they led Jesus away to the high priest, and with him were assembled all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes. Now, when this happens in Matthew, it's not quite the same, right?
Mhm.
They lead him to someone's house
They do.
specifically.
Yeah.
And here it's just to the high priest and all the elders and chiefs and scribes. Now, these are people who constitute the Sanhedrin, or the Jerusalem City Council. It had authority over Jewish life in Judea, but Romans reserved control over some legal aspects, especially capital punishment. For this reason, because the trial is placed on Passover, when such activities would be strictly forbidden by Jewish law, Talmud makes it clear that one may work at most until noon on the day which Passover begins at sundown, because it's highly unlikely the Sanhedrin would convene on the first night of Passover, and because the Sanhedrin trial is absent in John's Gospel. The scene's historicity is doubted by most scholars.
Yeah. That's pretty much the conclusion it comes to in here as well.
Yeah. So part of that,
Like there would have been no reason to go through with this anyways, because it would have been Pilate ultimately anyways who made the decision, right?
right, and we do see that ultimately is Pilate.
Yeah.
But that occurs in the next chapter, which we'll get to. So he gets taken by these people. And Peter followed him afar off, even unto the palace of the high priest. And he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. And the chief priests and all the councils sought for witness against Jesus to put him to death, and found none. For many bare false witness against him, but their witness agreed not together. And there arose certain and bare false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and within 3 days I will build another made without hands. But neither so did their witness agree together. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, saying, Answerest thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? But he held his peace and answered nothing. And again the high priest asked him and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? Here he's asking him if he's the Messiah, specifically. Now, biblical law forbade suborning perjury and convicting based on conflicting evidence. This is in Exodus 20:16 and Deuteronomy 19:15. So the proceedings are presented as violations of Jewish criminal procedure. Although the testimony is depicted as false, according to Mark, Jesus had predicted the destruction of the temple. Right. So that did occur. The titles Messiah or Christ and Son of the Blessed One are not blasphemy, since a Jewish king could be both, but they are politically dangerous. According to Mark, the high priest takes Jesus' quotations of Psalm 110:1 and Daniel 7:13 and his identification of himself with the judging Son of Man as blasphemy from the Sanhedrin's point of view. His verdict is no more legitimate than the trial itself.
Yeah, so so they'd probably say like the blessed one because you can't say his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the okay, so although it is not a phrase commonly attested in Second Temple Jewish texts, it has an analogy in Philo's reference to God as Hopanta Makarios, the all blessed,
right?
The fully, blessed in everything, I guess.
Yeah, and it's similar to the rabbinic Holy One, blessed be He in Hebrew, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is used in some prayers.
Yeah.
So he asked them, Are you Christ, Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am, and ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. I'm pretty sure that this is a departure from what happens in Matthew. I'm going to check.
Okay, so the prediction that the members of the council will see the Son of Man sitting on the right of the power evokes Psalm 110. 110:1, one of the two psalms evoked in 12:36. There, Jesus raised the question how the scribes could say that the Messiah is David's son if David addressed him as Lord. We had a whole talk about that. The question received no explicit answer at the time, As argued above, the question is part of the reinterpretation of the contemporary notion of the Davidic Messiah or the Messiah of Israel in Mark as a whole.
So let me point this out here. In Mark, Jesus responds to this question saying, I am, and you shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven.
Okay.
Whereas in Matthew, Jesus says, thou hast said, or you say so. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. So,
so his response was more detailed in Matthew a little bit.
Well, partially, but there's a difference here, right? Because Mark has Jesus saying outright, yes, I am.
Yeah.
And Matthew has him being like, well, that's what you say.
Yeah, exactly.
So totally different attitudes from Jesus between these two books in the same scene.
Right.
Then the high priest rent his clothes and saith, what need we any further witnesses? Ye have heard the blasphemy. What think ye? And they all condemned him to be guilty of death. And some began to spit on him and to cover his face and to buffet him, or buffet him. I guess buffet.
Yeah.
And say unto him, prophecy. And the servants did strike him with the palms of their hands. And as Peter was beneath in the palace, there cometh one of the maids of the high priest. And when she saw Peter warming himself, she looked upon him and said, and thou also wast with Jesus of Nazareth. But he denied, saying, I know not, neither understand I what thou sayest. And he went out to the porch, and the cock crew. And the maid saw him again, and began to say to them that stood by, this is one of them. And he denied it again. And a little after, they that stood by said again to Peter, surely thou art one of them, for thou art a Galilean, and thy speech agreeth thereto. But he began to curse and to swear, saying, I know not this man of whom ye speak.
Wow, he's just being a dick.
Yep. And the second time the cock crew, and Peter called to mind the word that Jesus said unto him, before the cock crow twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. And when he had thought thereon, he wept.
Yeah, so that was, Peter was just being a dick there. Peter was kind of it seems like nobody really likes Peter all that much.
Yeah, well, in Peter's situation
like
here,
in any book we've read so far.
Yeah, with his situation there, it's basically like, hey, you're one of the collaborators with this guy who's just been sentenced to death, aren't you? No, not at all.
Yeah, so
that's
like
not me.
You can see why he would say that, but still, like, and Jesus was like, you're gonna deny me, and here he is denying him.
Yeah. So that is the end of chapter 14. If you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, neighbors, and we will continue on into chapter 15.
Yes, we will. Yeah, we got this is where he comes before Pilate. All right, let's go. And as soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. And they bound Jesus and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews?
All right, so this is very interesting. So first of all, it's very early in the morning. The working day of a Roman official began at daylight. The morning would have been Friday of Passion Week. So they accused Jesus before civil authority for treason rather than blasphemy. Now, Pilate was the Roman governor of Judea from AD 26 to 36, whose official residence was in Caesarea on the Mediterranean coast. In 1961, archaeologists working at Caesarea unearthed a stone contemporary with Pilate and inscribed with his name. When he came to Jerusalem, he stayed in the magnificent palace built by Herod the Great, located west and a little south of the temple area. Mark uses the word praetorium to indicate this palace in verse 16, and it was here that the Roman trial of Jesus took place. Now, I want to detail here, from Eerdmans. They bind Jesus and send him to Pilate. Pilate's question, "Are you king of the Jews?" makes clear what charge the ruling priests have brought against Jesus. Jesus' affirmation of messiahship and divine sonship, understood in the Jewish context, amounts to an unambiguous claim to kingship.
Yeah.
The Roman Senate made...
They couldn't have that.
Right. The Roman Senate made kings, such as Herod the Great. Self-proclaimed kings were viewed as treasonous rebels, and in recent years, Israel had been plagued with several would-be kings.
Yeah, so it's likely... Hold up. Oh, man, that phlegm. That phlegm is something else, huh?
Incredible.
So, it's likely that the earliest passion narrative was shaped, not only by historical reminiscence, but by an apologetic perspective as well. This apologetic perspective included the idea that Jesus was executed because he admitted that he was the Messiah, which is equivalent to King of the Jews. Even if 1462 was not part of the pre-Mark and Passion narrative, Pilate's question presupposes that, pretty much what you said before, that they had already charged him with saying this.
Now, I also want to point out, you should pull out the Greek New Testament.
I will in just a second here. So, without preliminaries, the account moves directly from Jesus being handed over to Pilate. Bultmann argued that the question that was asked, as well as Jesus' answer, is an addition to the earliest story of the interrogation of Jesus by Pilate. This conclusion fits with his understanding of the development of the Passion narrative. First was the proclamation of the Passion in the Kerygma. Next came, quote, a short narrative of historical reminiscence about the arrest, condemnation, and execution of Jesus. Verse 2 is an addition because it is related to the perspective of 1455 through 64, according to which Jesus was executed for his messianic claims.
Now, there's a second half to verse 2. What does yours say in the ESV?
In verse 2. Okay, yeah. So, and Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so."
All right. So, the NIV says, "Yes, it is as you say." The NRSV, which the Jewish Annotated New Testament uses, says, "You say so." And the King James, on the other hand, says, "Thou sayest it." So what does the Greek actually say? Is there an affirmation which occurs there? Because the interpretation of the scene changes based on the presence or absence of him saying yes.
So, the words "suleges," you say, may be taken either as a statement, as in the text, or as a question. As a statement, the emphatic pronoun may suggest that Jesus agrees, but that he would have staged things differently from what Pilate has said. Stated things differently. As an alternative reading, it's sometimes punctuated this as a question, but the sense will be the same since this would be a rhetorical question. I'm going to check the Greek there, but it looks like it's just "suleges," you say.
All
and
right.
It doesn't say much more than that, but I will check it.
In replying, "You are saying it," Jesus does not refuse the title King of the Jews, but neither does he say "I am," as he had when Caiaphas asked him if he was the Messiah, Son of God. That Jesus' answer was not seen as a rejection of the title is seen in his subsequent crucifixion and mockery as King of the Jews. Jesus is put out as King of the Jews, but not in the sense understood by Rome, her Jewish collaborators, or various Jewish would-be kings. Jesus' kingship.
It just says "suleges," you say.
Okay. So, yeah, he would be King of the Jews, but it's not in the same way, at least based on the Christian account, right? As a descendant of David, I guess, right? But also Joseph was a descendant of David, so he would just as rightfully be King of the Jews.
All right, let's continue on here. So yeah, and he answered him, "You have said so." And the chief priests accused him of many things. And Pilate again asked him, "Have you no answer to make?" Well, okay. So in this case, then wouldn't it mean specifically that he didn't answer?
Right.
That it wouldn't have been an affirmation? So wouldn't that just be kind of a silly question to even ask?
Right.
Because it says right there. All right, whatever. So, I mean, I guess ignore everything you said before, because he's saying right now, like, you're not even going to answer me? Like,
well, this is important. If Jesus,
so.
If Jesus made no defense, according to Roman law, Pilate would have to pronounce against him. It's actually a legal requirement.
Right, but when he's saying, "Have you no answer to make?" Is that a suggestion of, like, have you no defense for yourself? Or
right, because he's not affirming or denying either way.
Right,
he's
right,
putting
right.
Pilate in the position where he has to be responsible for what happens.
Yeah, like, I get that. I get that part. But it would then imply that he's not answering either way.
Right.
Okay. See how many charges they bring against you. But Jesus made no further answer, so that Pilate was amazed.
Wow.
Now, at the feast, he used, right,
and he would have been amazed strictly because of that legal requirement, because it means that Jesus is making no attempt to save his own life whatsoever.
Right. So, all right, so we'll talk about this a bit. I will read the section, and then we'll talk about this as a whole. Now at the feast he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" And they cried out once again, "Crucify him!" And Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him!" So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, having scourged Jesus. He delivered him to be crucified. So that was... like, what did he do wrong?
Yeah. Well,
just kill him already.
Right. So Barabbas, first of all, it's Aramaic for son of the father. Thus, the character is likely seen as narrative double for Jesus, depicted by Mark as the son of God the Father. The name is not unknown, however. There is no evidence that the Romans released prisoners.
Right, yeah. Generally agree that there is no evidence outside of the canonical Gospels for the specific custom mentioned here, Pilate releasing criminals for, like, every year during Passover.
Right.
Craig Evans argues...
Further, were Barabbas to be released for the festival, the timing is off. The Paschal lamb was eaten the night before.
All right, fair enough. But apparently Craig Evans argues in support of the historicity of the custom that it is attested in two separate streams of tradition, Mark, followed by Matthew and Luke, and John. Those would be the two separate streams. Matthew indeed follows Mark, but the earliest recoverable text of Luke omits the allusion to this custom. John does mention the practice, but it is not certain that John is independent of Mark, at least with respect to the passion narrative. As in, like, they could have the same source there.
Now, it's also pointed out that Barabbas committed murder during the insurrection.
Yeah.
Now, the NIV Study Bible says Barabbas is probably a member of the Zealots, a revolutionary Jewish group. Nothing from other sources is known about this insurrection, though Mark speaks of it as if it were well known.
Right.
Under the Roman prefects, such revolts were common. This also is noted in Luke.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, so just at the end of this, they're all like, just kill the guy. Which is, this would be a weird custom there to have. Mm-hmm. Just as it is surprising that the definite article is used to introduce Barabbas. That's interesting. It is, because that rarely happens where you have an article introduce a person. That does happen sometimes, but they have to have some high class usually, some high status for that to happen. By the way, is used to introduce Barabbas. It is also odd that the definite articles are used to introduce the rebels, not exactly, and the rebellion. In the latter two related cases, many scholars have been inclined to infer that an actual uprising in the time of Pilate is presumed here, even though there is no corroborating evidence outside of the Gospels. It could well be, however, that the use of these articles is part of vivid storytelling technique. Well, I mean, yes, that's also possible, I suppose.
I also want to point out there's a character who appears in Matthew who does not appear here.
Wasn't it the... Because I don't think we were...
It's Pilate's wife. Pilate's wife, who in Matthew notes that she had this prophetic dream that came to her pertaining to the death of Jesus, and tried to, I believe she tried to talk Pilate out of it. She doesn't make any appearance whatsoever.
Was that Pilate's wife that was?
Yeah, that was Pilate's wife. I'm pretty sure. Let me pull up the part in Matthew, because it was towards the end.
Right.
Anyway, so there is this part. There's the plot against Jesus. Then there's the bit with Jesus being arrested. Judas hangs himself. That didn't happen in this version. In this scene, actually just prior to this scene, before he allows them to make the choice between Jesus and Barabbas, his wife comes to him and she says, don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him, which would explain why there was something here that occurred which wouldn't normally occur, because the Romans wouldn't have a tradition of releasing prisoners on the Passover.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
Right? So Mark just totally removes that explanation.
Well, Matthew adds that explanation.
Right. Yeah. Matthew adds that explanation, and probably Matthew adds that explanation because he is more familiar with Jewish custom than Mark is. The author of Matthew is more familiar than the author of Mark. And he probably would know that this would be highly irregular and needed an explanation.
That would make sense, yeah. So that is interesting. Yeah, I totally forgot about that part. I remember something about, a prophecy about it, but I forgot.
Oh, well, it's like one verse.
A dream, but yeah. All right. Let's continue on here. Wait, where was I? Right. Okay. So, and the soldiers led him away inside the palace, that is the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole battalion.
Right. This would be the praetorium. Mm-hmm. The word was originally used of a general's tent or of the headquarters in a military camp. Here it has different meaning.
And they clothed him in a purple cloak, the royal colors.
Yep, which is different in the other version, right?
Yes,
where
it's scarlet, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on him, and they began to salute him. Hail the King of the Jews!
Right, and this is a mocking salutation that corresponded to Hail Caesar.
Yeah.
Caesar.
And they were striking his head with a reed and spitting on him, which could heal him.
It's probably a parody on the kiss of homage that was customary in the Near East when in the presence of royalty.
I should finish the thing here. With the reed and spitting on him and kneeling down in homage to him.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was customary to kiss royalty here. They're spitting on him, which
has healing powers.
Right. Well, only if they rub it in his eyes or
Big
spit in his mouth.
Yeah, right. Big Dom energy, except for the time that he healed a person very shortly after that, where he didn't need to spit on them.
Right.
Man, the past was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when they had mocked him,
right,
they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him, and they led him out to crucify him. Okay, so they had they essentially had a mock coronation.
Right.
Yeah.
They give him this laurel wreath.
Yeah.
Where it's actually a crown of thorns or briars, really. And they give him this purple robe that they strip off of him. They leave the thorns on his head. Because who wants to touch that?
Yeah. Right. Like, they're like, you know what? We'll just leave it on him. He's fine. And they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross.
Yeah, so Cyrene, it's an important city of Libya in North Africa that had a large Jewish population. Simon is probably a Jew who was in Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover.
Yeah, he was just like some random dude at this point, right?
Yeah, we also have Alexander and Rufus.
Yeah.
They're only mentioned by Mark, but referred to in such a way as to suggest that they were known by those to whom he wrote. Rufus may be the same person spoken of in Romans 16:13. May not be. Also for carrying the cross. Men condemned to death were usually forced to carry a beam of the cross, often weighing 30 or 40 pounds, to the place of the crucifixion. Jesus started out by carrying his, but had been so weakened by flogging that Simon is pressed into service. But 30 or 40 pounds isn't actually that much.
Right.
So he must have been pretty weak at this point.
Compelled this guy, Simon of Cyrene, to carry this cross. And they brought him to the place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull.
Yeah, it may refer to the shape of the hill.
And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his garments among them, casting lots for them to decide what each should take.
So the crucifixion is described in only one sentence. The extreme physical agony would have been known by all, but the Gospels emphasize the shame much more than the suffering. Rome reserved death by crucifixion for slaves and insurrectionists. So here it would apply to Jesus as he would be seen as an insurrectionist.
Yeah.
By being proclaimed king of the Jews.
So it would make sense then that Barabbas was like a stand-in for it. Like the what do they call it, like a double or like a twin or something?
Yeah. For dividing his clothes, the Psalms and Isaiah were used to provide some of the details of the scene. Doesn't say directly where those details are filled in, but here, crucified, a Roman means of execution in which the victim was nailed to a cross. We know that they wouldn't normally actually be nailed to a cross, right?
Right. They'd be like tied to it, kind of.
And they don't specify that he's nailed to the cross here either.
Yeah.
I don't believe they did so in Matthew either. So presumably this is something...
In Matthew, didn't they use the term pierced, though? And that's where...
I'm not sure. Let me pull up Matthew after I finish this.
By the way, they crucified him, right?
Yeah, they crucify him. So first century authors vividly describe the agony and disgrace of being crucified. But let me pull up Matthew and the crucifixion scene there. Okay. And we'll see if there is actually a piercing.
Like, I think it was that, or maybe I'm just reading into it.
Yeah, they don't say it there. They just say in Matthew, when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes by casting lots.
Okay.
They don't actually reference to piercing the hands and feet.
Fair enough.
So, very odd. Because typically, when you think of like the image of Jesus, on the cross,
you have what's like with the nails.
always with the nails.
Yeah.
But it is not typically the case, and in at least half the Gospels, they don't say that.
All right. So, yes, they crucified him and cast lots for his clothes. And it was the third hour when they crucified him. And the inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified two robbers, one on his right and one on his left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "Aha! You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Save your..." Okay, so they're saying that you, this guy who would rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross. So also the chief priests with the scribes mocked him to one another, saying, "He saved others, he can't save himself." That's in there, all those ha-has. They're in there. They're not, I'm lying.
What is your verse 28?
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. It goes 27 to 29. And verse 28, let me just see this right here.
The traditional text of Mark includes verse 28, and the majority of the manuscripts contain it. Quote, "And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, and he was considered to be among the lawless." Although this verse was not part of the earliest recoverable text of Mark, its addition demonstrates that later editors and scribes of Mark recognized in verse 27 an allusion to Isaiah 53:12.
Right. The earlier and more reliable Greek manuscripts do not have this verse.
Right.
It was probably added from Luke 22:37, quoting Isaiah 53:12. Mark does not include many Old Testament quotations.
That is true. Very few. So that's interesting.
Yeah, weird. And they don't even change the verse numbering.
Yeah.
They just leave verse 28 out.
Because it would have been numbered 28 like a long time ago, right? So then if you change the numbers, depending on what version you're reading, it would be difficult.
It'd be like the Masoretic text.
Yeah, it'd be difficult to follow, is the thing. So they just took out the verse instead of changing the numbering.
Yeah.
Which I think makes sense.
So that's a pretty significant manuscript difference.
It is, yeah. So yeah, they're like mocking him and whatnot. He can't save himself. "Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also reviled him for some reason. I think they had bigger problems.
Yeah.
So now to the death of Jesus here.
Yes.
"And when the 6th hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice."
Wait. So in apocalypses, the conditions at the end time replay those of creation. See, for example, Baruch, 2 Baruch 32, and Genesis 1, 2 through 3. The darkness coming over the land is repeating the same instances at the beginning of Genesis, where there's darkness over the face of the deep. So this is now going into the apocalyptic genre, right?
Well, this is going into eschatological
Right.
genre, I would say. So here's what he cries out. "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Now I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, he cries out with, actually, why don't you read through verse 37?
Will do. "And some of the bystanders, hearing it, said, 'Behold!
Behold!
Oh,
He is calling Elijah!' And someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down." And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last breath.
So, a few things. First of all, the words are spoken in Aramaic, but with some Hebrew characteristics. One of the languages commonly spoken in Palestine in Jesus' day. They reveal how deeply Jesus felt his abandonment by God as he bore the sins of mankind, but this is also in Psalm 22. For Elijah, they mistake Eloi to be a cry for Elijah. It was commonly believed that Elijah would come at times of critical need to protect the innocent and rescue the righteous. The sour wine is a wine vinegar that would be used by laborers and soldiers. Definitely not good wine. For the loud cry, the strength of the cry indicates that Jesus did not die the ordinary death of those crucified, who normally suffered long periods of complete agony, exhaustion, and then unconsciousness before dying, whereas he screams out before he dies. Now, there's a piece here that speaks about the cry of dereliction in the Jewish annotated New Testament. So I'm going to read that. Psalm 22 is a favorite of the early followers of Jesus for the interpretation of the Passion narrative. No element is more dramatic than Jesus' final cry, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Mark reports the words in a combination of Aramaic and Hebrew, and then provides a Greek translation. Luke 23:46 lacks this cry and presents instead a less passionate quotation of Psalm 31:5, while John 19:30 depicts Jesus stoically uttering a more philosophical phrase, "It is finished," or "It is fulfilled." Mark does not depict Jesus dying the noble death of Socrates in Phaedo, or the martyr Eleazar of the Maccabean revolt in 2 Maccabees 6:30. Rather, the suffering that Jesus has predicted is fully depicted, as well as the irony that people mock him and do not understand. Jesus' descending fate, communicated from the beginning of the gospel and unrelieved even by a resurrection account, is most powerfully depicted here. The other elements from Psalm 22 noted in another part of the book only serve to increase the theme of suffering through shaming. In Psalm 22, where the issue is likely a grave illness, the plaint is followed by God's healing and a thanksgiving for it. Readers knowing the psalm would anticipate this resolution, just as they know the resurrection account that Mark does not provide. Further, Mark depicts Jesus as crying out, but not necessarily as despairing. In the Jewish lament tradition, bitter complaint can open the communication with God that gives rise to prayer and a plea for help. See Lamentations 3:22-23. Thus, together with the tearing of the temple curtain, which occurs in 1538, and the utterance of the centurion in 1539, the cry may also signal an exchange between humans and the divine realm.
You know, I also want to point out that it might be possible that this was also a mocking gesture.
Right.
Yeah, so with the sour wine, there's a quotation here from Psalm 68:22, and they gave me gall or bile for food, and for my thirst they gave me sour wine to drink. And then also in the same context, Psalm. This is from Qumran here. They have denied the drink of knowledge to the thirsty, but for their thirst they have given them sour wine to drink. So it looks like it's totally possible that this is also a mocking kind of gesture.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's evoking Elijah. Let's see what. Here you go, Elijah evoker. Like, take some of this.
Now, why don't you continue on here?
All right. And so, I gave him this reed with wine, sour wine, I should say. And the curtain. Jesus is dead now. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom.
Yeah, this is the curtain that separated the holy place from the most holy place.
Yep. Now we're getting cataclysmic, cosmic events here.
Which might also call back to the opening of the windows of heaven in Genesis, right? Because there is literally a rending.
That wasn't at the very beginning.
Right.
It wasn't during creation.
Right. It wasn't during creation. But there is a rending between the most holy place and the holy place, right? Which is like a firmament, in a sense.
I guess. So, yes, but it ripped either way. And when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last breath, he said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God."
Right.
There were also women looking on from a distance, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the Younger, and Joseph and Salome.
So for Mary Magdalene, from chapter 16, verse 9, and Luke 8:2, we learn that Jesus had driven 7 demons out of her. Whereas we don't really get any details about Mary Magdalene in Matthew, other than that she shows up and she's one of the women who's involved with Jesus towards the end of his life.
Yeah. All right. When he was in Galilee, they followed him and ministered to him. And there were also many other women who came up with him to Jerusalem. He was a player. He was a player. Yeah. And when evening had come, since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself looking for the kingdom of God, took courage and went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus.
Right, and this would have to be done in a hurry. Since it was late in the afternoon, there's an urgency to get Jesus' body down from the cross before sundown when the Sabbath begins.
Yeah, like, hey, can we please have the body? Thanks, man. Apparently he was very well respected, so that's something. Pilate was surprised to hear that he should have already died, and summoning the centurion, he asked him, so he's surprised that he's already dead. So usually it takes way longer than this.
Well, they would slowly suffocate.
Right. So it usually takes way longer. So he's like,
Yeah, crucified men often live 2 or 3 days before dying. The early death of Jesus was on the first day. Extraordinary.
Yeah. This is he died on the first day of it. And summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he was already dead. And when he learned from the centurion that he was dead, he granted the corpse to Joseph. And Joseph brought a linen shroud, and taking him down, wrapped him in the linen shroud, and laid him in a tomb that had been cut out of the rock. And he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of, it says Joseph, where he was laid.
Yeah, Mary, the mother of Joseph.
Yeah, unless this is a typo that happened twice. Okay, let me just, you know what? Let me just check the Greek.
Probably, yeah. No, this is the mother of James the Younger and of Joseph. And it says, see verse 47. And that's just where she
that's
also...
that's the one with that.
So this is just another character.
Yeah, I guess. All right. Just one that we haven't seen before, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, finish the verse.
Okay. I'll check that later. All right, no introduction there for Joseph, right? Mm-hmm. Mary, mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid. That's it. So they saw the body in the tomb.
Right. So this is important because in Jewish tradition, the legal tradition, in order to have a valid legalistic claim, you have to have two people who have seen the event happen, which makes things like murder in a back alley or sexual assault particularly difficult to litigate.
Yeah.
Right. But here we have 2 people who witnessed this, which may have some legalistic purpose. Also, we have Joseph, who takes the body and puts it into into the tomb.
Yeah.
Others expected the kingdom of God. So Joseph is not necessarily a follower of Jesus. He's just his father, kind of. Right. By assuring that Jesus' corpse is removed before nightfall, Joseph fulfills Deuteronomy 21:22 through 23. Also Tobit 1 through 2. So, like, Joseph is doing what is required of him religiously by burying him.
Yeah. Before nightfall, looks like, or sorry, at night.
So, with that being said, that is, if I'm not mistaken, the end of chapter 15.
Yep.
And Lawrence, do you hear something?
I do hear something.
What?
It's loud, and it's definitely not Jesus.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Oh, Jesus! Hey, good to see you. You know, I just heard that you died. I had no idea.
Again.
Again. I'm sorry. You know, I hope you get better soon.
Didn't stick that whole time.
I think you will, though. I think you will. Something tells me that you will. I feel like I've heard that you'll get
today's
better.
readings even.
Maybe. Definitely, actually.
Yeah.
No. But I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. How you get out of this one. Excited to see the end of this story, huh? And
How many endings of this story are you excited to see?
all of them. But look who's back.
Yeah. You know, this is an interesting bit because Mark has two endings.
Yes. Okay, so I think beginning with verse 9, yeah. So verse 9 until the end. Verse 9 through what, 16, I think. I think it's through 16. That is a later edition. It is the longer ending of Mark. Mark would have ended with verse 8, but instead it goes on further. But that is a later edition. That is a very major.
Hold on,
difference.
there's some disagreement here. The two endings were not likely found in the copies of Mark that Matthew and Luke utilized. The shorter ending is not attested in any manuscript earlier than the 4th century. The likely original ending of Mark, most scholars assume that the longer ending is traditional, and that it's a 2nd century pastiche of phrases from the other Gospels. For centuries, it was accepted as the authentic conclusion to the Gospel, and it was included in the King James Version, until recently the most widely used English translation. It provides the scriptural basis for groups who practice snake handling and drinking poison while in the spirit. So we're gonna get into that.
All right then.
So let's hop into it. Chapter 16. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome had brought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun, and they said among themselves, Who shall roll us away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? When they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted. And he saith unto them, Be not affrighted. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. But go your way, tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye seek him, as he said unto you. And they went out quickly and fled from the sepulchre, for they trembled and were amazed. Neither said they anything to any man, for they were afraid. Now, right here is there's the shorter ending of Mark, which takes place here.
So here's a big...
And the shorter ending says, I'm just going to read it off because this is where that version ends. Mm-hmm. But that also does not occur in the longer ending. So it's a completely separate thing. And all that had been commanded them, they told briefly to those around Peter, and afterward Jesus himself sent out through them from east to west the sacred and imperishable proclamation of eternal salvation. That's the shorter ending. That verse does not occur in the longer ending.
Oh.
So
it looks like there is a pretty big argument here surrounding the use of the word God. So it means for, but it's not like a preposition for. It's more like
Number.
No, nor is it the number. It's usually it's usually at the very beginning of a sentence, and it is if I were to say a sentence like, for he had done this thing, or for he had made this behold can. So that's that for. That's what God is. Robert Gundry argued that verse 8 in the autograph of Mark was not the conclusion to the pericope that began with verse 1, but the beginning of a new unit, the rest of which is now lost. He gives 12 arguments in support of the hypothesis. In the 10th argument, he acknowledges that a sentence or paragraph or section may end in God. He argues, nevertheless, that no other book has God as its last word. He's referencing another author here as a possible exception with the reference to an article by P.W. Vanderhorst. In that article, Vanderhorst took the position that, quote, if a sentence can end with God, a book can end with such a sentence. As an example, he pointed to the above-mentioned text, the 32nd treatise of Plotinus, as edited by Porphyry, which ends with God. Following R. Harder, he acknowledges the treatises 30, 31, 32, and 33 constitute one large treatise, but there is evidence that these treatises were originally 4 separate lectures on the same topic. The lecture in question, presented as a distinct treatise, number 32, by Porphyry, ends as follows. Quote, for that which acts is better than that which is acted upon, for it is more perfect. But it does end in God. But that last sentence there is for it is more perfect. God is the second word, and God is usually the second word in a sentence. So that one is again possible exception there because it's such a short sentence, right? Mm-hmm. Clayton Croy concluded that the most significant analogies to 16:8 are the Plotinus passage and the 12th essay of Musonius Rufus. The latter concerns sexual indulgence. This short essay or fragment of an essay ends with a question followed by a short statement. Quote, what need is there to say that it is an act of licentiousness and nothing less for a master to have relations with a slave? Everyone knows that. But of course, when it says everyone knows that, it's for everyone knows that, or for it is known. Croy is also very short. Croy also noted, as others had before him, that a work attributed to Demetrius on epistolary on epistolary types ends with God, but he found this fact deceptive since the final sentence for I am in your debt, Hophelo God, is actually the last sentence of a sample letter of the thankful type. The argument, so in light of evidence, it seems best to regard verse 8 as the original ending of Mark and to interpret the additional endings as products of later times.
Right. Now, I want to point out that the Jewish annotated New Testament says that the longer ending is traditional, but the NIV Study Bible says the earliest manuscripts and some other ancient witnesses do not have verses 9 through 20. That serious doubt exists as to whether these verses belong to the Gospel of Mark. They're absent from important early manuscripts and display certain peculiarities of vocabulary, style, and theological content that are unlike the rest of Mark. His Gospel probably ended at 16:8, or its original ending has been lost. So we have opposite conclusions made between the NIV Study Bible commentary and the Jewish Annotated New Testament commentary, where the Jewish Annotated New Testament says that the longer ending is... okay, I misread. They say that it's not likely the original ending, but it is a traditional ending because it's been adopted so frequently. So... I guess they're in agreement then that there are significant differences between manuscripts. These verses that follow here do not exist in early manuscripts, but they have been widely adopted, so they're now part of tradition.
Yeah, it's important to note here that the
there's also a longer ending of Mark.
Wow.
Which I will get into as we get to the point where it pops up. But
yeah, so I'm going to note here from the textual guide here. So the textual and literary problems concerning the ending of Mark are very complicated. And of course, we just talked about a whole bunch of those. 4 endings of Mark exist in the manuscripts. 1, the last 12 verses of the commonly received text of Mark are absent from the 2 oldest Greek manuscripts.
Which means it would end at verse 8.
Mm-hmm. From the old Latin manuscript. So this is going on. It's absent from the 2 oldest Greek manuscripts. From the old Latin manuscript, Bobiensis, I guess. The Sinaitic Syriac manuscript, about 100 Armenian manuscripts, and the 2 oldest Gregorian manuscripts. Clement of Alexandria and Origen show no knowledge of the existence of these verses. Furthermore, Eusebius and Jerome, 2 really early church fathers, 4th and 5th centuries, claim that these verses were absent from almost all Greek copies of Mark known to them. A number of manuscripts that contain these verses have scribal notes stating that older Greek copies lack them. And in other manuscripts, the passage is marked with signs used by copyists to indicate in addition to the document.
So
2. Here's the second one. Several manuscripts, including 4 Uncial Greek manuscripts, have a shorter ending before verses 9 through 20. Yeah, so this is... I should show this. So you have here... So Mark regularly ends up here. I don't know if you see that well.
Yes.
So it ends up here, okay? But then in the middle, there's a paragraph, kind of on its own, that just says the shorter ending of Mark.
Right.
And it's all on its
That's
own.
what I just read. So I guess there's a version that ends at verse 8. There's a version that ends with
like a longer version of verse 8.
a longer version of verse 8, which I just read.
Yeah.
There's a version that contains verses 9 through 20, and there's a version that includes a huge expansion to the end of verse 14, which I will read when we get to it.
Yeah.
It does not occur in the KJV.
Yeah, so number 3 here. The traditional ending of Mark, that's, of course, the long one. The vocabulary and style of this longer ending are different from the rest of the gospel, and this suggests that verses 9 through 20 are not original. There are inconsistencies between verses 1 through 8 and 9 through 20, such as the express identification of Mary Magdalene in verse 9, even though she has just been mentioned in 15:47 and 16:1, and the omission of mention of the other women, verses 1 through 8, verses 1 through 8. It is likely that this longer ending was taken from another document dating perhaps from the first half of the 2nd century and added to verses 1 through 8 in order to supply a more appropriate conclusion. And then number 4, in the 4th century, the traditional ending, that's the longer one, also circulated according to the testimony preserved by Jerome in an expanded form, preserved today in Codex. Oh my God, this name, Washingtonianus. What? Oh my God, Washingtonianus. Thank you. Wow, ridiculous. Since the longer ending of Mark is important in the textual tradition of the gospel, it has been included as part of the text, but it has been put in double brackets to indicate that it is not original. Then, you read that shorter ending, of course.
Yeah.
And then for the longer one here, since verses 9 through 20 are lacking in the earlier and better manuscripts that normally serve to identify types of text, it is not always easy to choose among readings. In any case, it should be understood that the several levels of certainty, and by levels of certainty like A, B, and C, they usually give a grade to each one, like to how certain they are in that reading. They give a grade for it. The levels of certainty A, B, and C do not mean that any of these readings is original to the Gospel of Mark, but rather that these letters refer to the levels of certainty regarding what is original to this later addition to the Gospel. Okay, so they're not even going to bother with a grade there. But
so how about I get into this longer ending?
Yes.
Now, when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 devils. And she went and told them that she had been with him, and they mourned and wept. And they, when they had heard that he was alive and had been seen of her, believed not. After that, he appeared in another form unto 2 of them, as they walked, and went into the country. And they went and told it unto the residue. Neither believed they them. Afterward he appeared unto the 11 as they sat at meat, and upbraided them with their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they believed not them which had seen him after he was risen. Now, other ancient authorities add here, in whole or in part, and they excuse themselves, saying, this age of lawlessness and unbelief is under Satan, who does not allow the truth and power of God to prevail over the unclean things of the spirits. Therefore, reveal your righteousness now. Thus they spoke to Christ, and Christ replied to them, the term of years of Satan's power has been fulfilled, but other terrible things draw near. And for those who have sinned, I was handed over to death, that they may return to the truth and sin no more, that they may inherit the spiritual and imperishable glory of righteousness that is in heaven. That's where that ends. Now we continue to the rest of the long ending. So that what I just said does not occur in every version of the long ending. And he, talking about Jesus, said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils. They shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents. And if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. So then, after the Lord had spoken to them, he was received up into heaven, and sat on the right hand of God. And they went forth and preached everywhere, the Lord working with them, and confirming the word with signs following. Amen. And that is the long ending of Mark.
And that is the end of Mark in general.
What a crazy ending.
Yeah, right. The textual issues behind the ending of Mark.
Not only
It's
the
crazy, man.
textual issues, but like you have the long ending, which like first of all, this is where those snake handling priests get their stuff.
Yep.
But you also have the longer ending, which talks about how like Satan's in control of the earth and how
You got to go preach.
and there are more terrible things to come.
Yeah.
So, that is pretty interesting. How weird. I guess Mark is pretty old, right?
It would be the earliest gospel, yeah.
It would be the earliest gospel, and
Yeah, this is like the director's cut or the
the
extended-
unrated version.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think about the Gospel of Mark?
Well, I mean, it was fine. I like some of the detail that Matthew had.
Yeah, Matthew was definitely a lot more detailed and gave a lot more context based off of the Old Testament to things that we would see in there, even if a lot of what he had was misinterpretations of the Old Testament.
Absolutely.
You know, if they had
He
what
tried.
was
He
it?
tried.
If they had Mark 15:28, maybe I'd maybe it'd be good.
Right. Then it would be
that
good.
would've
That
been-
was the real.
That was the yep.
Right. There's a lot that's messy with Mark towards the end here. There's missing verses. There's like, for some reason, a bunch of added verses. There's at least 4 endings. There.
Yeah. So right, because you have like verse 8, an expansion on verse 8, and then you have the longer ending, which it also has which also has an addition within it. So like it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a bunch of possible endings that you could choose for Mark.
It's probably just verse 8.
It's probably just verse 8 and probably the shorter version of verse 8.
Yeah, probably.
But moreover, Matthew is the better book. When it comes to these two, Mark
I would
just
say so.
is lacking a bunch of detail. It lacks characters that explain why things are going on. We have no reason to there's no reason in Mark for why Pilate was forgiving either Barabbas or Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in Matthew there is. It's a less coherent story.
Feels like an alpha.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it is. It's the oldest gospel, right? So, maybe not the best one. Probably
Yeah, I don't like Mark. I was gonna rate Mark low if we're gonna do a rating for it.
right. I would rate. What did I rate Matthew at?
I don't remember.
It was probably like 7 or something. I'm gonna rate Mark a 5.
I was gonna put it at a 4.
I put it at a 6, honestly.
Really? I was gonna
Yeah,
put
it
at
was
a 4.
still like entertaining enough in places, but it did lack that.
Looks like it averages out to 5.
Yeah,
Damn.
averages out to 5. Not a great book.
Pretty big miss in my opinion.
Next time we will be reading Luke. Now Luke is not quite as long as Matthew. Maybe it's longer actually. No, in terms of chapter count, it's not quite as long, but I don't know about word count.
Right.
So
And Luke, I know it's a hard. I did have to translate parts of it in from Greek. And it is so Matthew's Greek and Matthew and Mark's Greek pretty simple. But yeah, Luke does step it up a notch. It is a slightly more complicated form of Greek.
yeah. Now beyond that,
Yeah, that is true, Klaus. It is less interpretation. Yeah. Which, like, you could say would make it more historical, right? Because it's not trying to interpret past scriptures, but which is something that Matthew just loves to do, and misinterprets them. So, but it does. what that interpretation does, at least from the quality of, entertainment, it adds something to it, right? But not in terms of like anything meaningful. So just in terms of entertainment.
Yeah. So,
Most important part.
yeah, Mark, really run-of-the-mill gospel. Probably will be outshined by everything else.
Maybe not everything else.
John,
Maybe not. Like, you've got all of these other gospels came after, so presumably they had some material from Mark to work with. At least Matthew definitely did.
Yeah.
Well, either from Mark or from the same source as Mark.
Right. Q, right?
Yeah. That'd
So
be
either Mark or Q. Let's just call it the Gospel of Judas. Which we'll read eventually on the Friday Apocryphal podcast. But anyways, well, hopefully Luke is a little more interesting.
It probably won't be.
It's longer at least.
It is longer.
So there's going to be more details. Mark sucks. Skip it. If you're reading the Bible, you're just reading the same story over and over again in the Gospels. Skip Mark. There's no reason to read Mark. There's really nothing of value that Mark has that no one else has.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
really
the least
nothing
unique because he's the first.
That's
and
about
usually when like there's
Mhm.
a game or a book or whatever, the first version isn't always the best.
Being the first, he might be the most important. Well,
yes, I would.
Q
say.
would be the most important.
Sure, but the thing is, Q still still theoretical.
Right.
It's just, and the most we can come up with is a few things that were probably in the document, but we don't know the setup of the document. Like a lot of people do think that it was like a saying source where it just was like the Gospel of was it the Gospel of Thomas? It's just sayings, so it's not like a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I know. A lot of people think that's what Q is. But either way, yeah, Thomas. There you go. So, Other than that, hope you enjoyed the stream today. Drop a like, subscribe if you haven't. We do this all the time, every week. But we weren't here on Friday. Unfortunately, how you feeling? You feeling better?
Yeah, I'm not puking, so
that's good. That's good.
yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I had issues at work yesterday with my heart, and I was like, fuck, I might not be able to do much, but I'm okay this morning. I got a good night's sleep. I'm doing all right.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know what would make you do even better? If our viewers checked us out on Patreon, where you can donate money to us and, you can be on the show. You could win yourself a T-shirt and
Where does Bird? No. Where does Bird? Do that one.
Yeah. Or
there you go.
You can
Where does
buy
Bird?
one of our beautiful T-shirts directly if you don't want to be entered into a giveaway. Super chats. Yeah, we accept super chats. You can get yourself that Word is Bird T-shirt right there.
Yeah, there it is. Looks nice.
People will think that it's a reference to something else.
But it's not. But in reality, it's a reference to Ahikar.
Right.
It's a reference to the OG.
What if Bird is the word is a reference to Ahikar?
Oh shit!
Oh my God, could you imagine? I don't think it is, but could you imagine?
Find the person who wrote it. Thank you, Ellis,
there you go.
for the 1999.
Very much appreciated, Ellis.
It's very much appreciated. For some reason, our chat revenue.
That's
Carlos, thank you as
with the
well.
$4.99.
$4.99. Thank you for the $4.99. Huh. So, yeah,
we appreciate it.
We
guys.
also have an Amazon wish list. It's full of books. You can support us that way, and we'll add books to the table and read books.
Yeah, and we'll read them to you, so you don't have to. You'll learn with us. We'll use them as sources in like our long form videos. Let's see what else we got. We got Facebook and Twitter.
Those are free.
Free to follow us on those. All the
Thank you
with the $4.99.
Well, that's $4.99 in European.
Right. So that's still $4.99, not in.
So we
USD.
might as well say like donkey, right?
Danke.
Yeah. Because it's European.
Yeah, that is.
Do you get the joke?
Yes.
Wow. Anyways.
Yeah, I think that's all the shilling what to do. And that's, all the links are in the description. Thank you everyone for donating.
You're all
that was really awesome. Thank you guys.
all.
And all the other stuff. Thank you for being in the chat. Thank you for joining us today for that. So, oh no.
How do you say it in Dutch?
I don't know. I have no idea. I feel like I learned it once.
Jag something.
I have no idea. I'm not even.
Dankjewel.
Okay, there you go. That's it right there. That's it right there. We got it. We'll try to remember that.
Which is very distinct from danke.
It is
Dank.
longer, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Either way,
Wow.
thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you on Friday and then Sunday. We'll probably be here on
too.
Friday,
But
nobody's
afterwards
gonna get
we'll be
sick.
here
I
on
hope
Sunday.
we'll be
and
here
then
for
we'll
the
be
show.
here